Assalamu alaikum, Surdikirschen, Marjdorsch. Меня зовут Deni Askhabov, so Deni. Welcome everyone to this live stream. This live stream will be in English and it will be about the basics of web development. So as this is our first live stream, I want to know if you can all hear me well, if my voice needs to be louder or softer. So if some of you could let me know via chat, that would be greatly appreciated. So just to let you know, this session will be mostly for beginners, so anyone that has already experience in web development, or has already at least made something basic in HTML, then this is probably not for you, because this will be extremely basic. This will cover the most basics of just web development. So this is for anyone that doesn't know anything about development in general. And if anyone during this session has any suggestions for me, like we will be developing a page in HTML, and if everyone has any ideas to incorporate, you're always welcome to let me know, to put it in chat, and I can implement them with you, no problem. Any questions that there are, this is live, you can always ask me a question, and I will try my best to answer you. Now, okay, let's start then. I think we are currently around 10 viewers. That's fine. You should be able to rewind, and this video will be live and viewable at the end of the session too, so don't worry, you can always come back to it. So let's start with the basics. I will give a little bit of theory because I don't want to just make this a lesson. I want to make this enjoying. I want to do a lot of practice. I want you to try things out so we can all learn from it, make a few mistakes, and try to learn from those mistakes. So let me go to the first part. So web development, in web development, the most basic way to create web pages is HTML. And HTML is not really a programming language, it's a hypertext markup language, which means that it's basically a language created to get a structure in a certain web page or document. So for structure and to put your content in, it's the most it's just the groundwork, it's the basics of creating a web page. Now to add some styling into your web page, you would need CSS, which is also not a programming language but a styling language. So you can add a certain color or width or, well, anything you can think of that challenges you creatively is done with CSS. And then the last part would be JavaScript. And I'm not sure we will be able to do anything related to JavaScript, as it's more advanced. It depends on how fast we go through this, how many questions we have. So we will see, maybe we will implement some JavaScript too, but JavaScript is a programming language and it allows us to add some logic, like if we press this button then we can change a certain color dynamically, or we can send or receive data from other websites or from a certain server to our website, and things like that. But we will mostly concentrate on HTML and CSS today. So I will switch my view. Okay, so to write in HTML, you need very basic things. You can just use Notepad if you're on Windows, or you could use TextMate if you're on Mac. So it's a normal, everyone has Notepad on their PC, and you could write your HTML code in there, save it as a .html file. So for example, index.html, and then you would be able to open it as this is for example an HTML file. I would be able to open it with any browser and it would show my page. But just for this session, we will use an online editor, so everyone can easily just try it out online and immediately see the results. It's a bit easier to use, especially live. So we all have the same environment to work in. I will copy and paste the link in the live chat, so all of you can open it and start from there. And then we will try to create the main landing page of WeyDu, or at least a part of it. We will keep it basic. We will not go too in depth, because that could take longer than an hour, definitely. Now, WeyDu isn't created with just normal HTML, CSS. The underlying, it uses HTML, of course, but it's made in WordPress, which is a tool that you can just drag and drop elements. But under that whole system, it basically uses HTML and CSS to make it look like it does. And as a server-side language, so as a programming language, it uses PHP instead of JavaScript, so it's just an alternative to it. But we will just create a static example right now. So let's remove all this, the HTML tag too, and we will keep this first line here. I hope this is all visible enough. I'm not sure if I should zoom in a little bit or not. I will zoom in just a bit. And as you see, if we run this, at the right side of the screen, we will have our view of our code. So we can immediately see changes that we make here, run them, and see them here. So the first thing that I will explain is that HTML works with tags, right? So we first have this tag over here. The one that I left here is basically the one that defines in which HTML version you're working. There are different HTML versions, but everyone is using the latest one, which is HTML5. And to basically tell the browser that you're working with HTML5, you have to write this code, doctype HTML, exclamation mark, doctype HTML. So if you wanted to use an older version, like version 4, I don't know, it would be something like v401 and then something else. I'm not sure what it is, but I've never used it before. Everyone uses HTML5 nowadays, so it's the most important one that you should know. Okay, before we actually get to the programming part, there is one more part of the theory that I would like to show you, and that is the basic structure of an HTML file. So, like I said, HTML works with tags. So to start your HTML, you have to start with the HTML tag. And most of the tags also needs to be closed. So yeah, we have our HTML and every content that goes in it, and then at the end you can see that you close your tag with a smaller than icon, then slash HTML greater than icon. And in this HTML basic structure, you have a head, which basically defines your basic information about your web page. So your title, for example, or metadata. And what I mean with metadata is data like a description of your website, which Google, for example, uses to find your website or to increase the ranking of your website in Google searches, for example. Yeah. So the head involves all the general data about your website, not the actual content of it. And then for the actual content, you have your body tags. So the opening tag and the closing tag. Now I'm looking always to the right because some of my presentation is on the right side of the screen while I'm explaining. Uh, just an FYI. I, we can now go back to the stream. Okay, great. So let's start some coding immediately then, right? So as we have seen before, you need to open the first HTML tag, and then we can also add the closing one. We'll also add the head and also the body as we had in the example. Let's immediately also add a title to our code. So my first web page. I'll post that. For now, this is enough info for the head. We don't need to add metadata right now, as we won't really create anything that Google needs to find. So for now, this should be enough for us. There are definitely some other things that need to be added in head later on, but we'll get on to that later. So now we want to create a website, right? And there are certain things that you need to figure out first, like what kind of layout do you want? Do you want navigation, or do you want a full width background? Like you need to figure out all these things. And as we are going to try to make this WeyDu main page, we will start with a navigation bar then. As you see, we have the logo and 5 elements and a search bar. We're not going too in depth with this. We'll start with so the basics, just these 4 elements here. And then we will see if we have enough time later on to the other parts. So to create the navigation bar, we need to add a navigation tag for it. So nav, and we close this nav. Okay. And in the navigation bar, we have basically a list of items, right? This is a list of 5 items. So for lists, we have also a special tag, which is called I see that Ibrahim says meta description is for browsers. Sorry, it is for the browser, but it also is for Google searches. Yeah, it's both. Um, okay, let's continue. So for the list of items, we can basically create a list which is called unnumbered list. So there are numbered lists and unnumbered lists, but this doesn't need to be numbered. So we can just use the unnumbered list, and we will close this back out. And then we will add different list items to it. So we will just copy paste this 4 times and add our items. Actually, let's do it capital like it is there. Events, contact, and then there is the language too, but we will just make it English. Now, if you run this page, you will immediately see that we have this list. Now, the styling is not right at all because we just are defining the structure right now. Styling we'll try to do at the end. So now let's continue with the actual content of the website. So we have 2 separate entities here. We have one line that is divided into 4 parts. Then we have one big image here. We will ignore these for now. So we basically have 2 big entities that cover the whole width, right? So we want to structure it like this too in our HTML. So just a second. There are multiple ways of doing this. There is not really a right or a wrong way. It all depends on how you want to implement it, because there are a lot of ways to structure your content, although there are certain ways that make it easier for you than others. You don't always have to use the tags that are made for example, for navigation. It's not really necessary to use nav. You could also use something else, but it's recommended to make reading of your HTML easier and to just have a more beautiful and clearly defined structure. Now there is also something called a div element, and this div element is basically used as a custom element by everyone. It allows you, actually you can change every element by changing their style, because every element has a certain style to them automatically. But divs are mainly used to create your own thing. So we can use divs for this first part here, and then divide it into 4 separate parts. So let's create a small layout of all these divs. let's put some extra lines in there. Now we see we have our main header, which is the title of our web page. And there are different headers that you can choose from, the tags that automatically exist specifically for headers. Like your H1, which is your biggest header. You have your H2, which is like your subheader. H3, H4, H5. I think it goes until H6, or it's 5 or 6. I'm actually not too sure. But for this, we will use our main header, our H1. Ibrahim, if you're there, you are always welcome to chime in. So we added our header here, and let's now add our text. This P stands for paragraph, so most of your text will be in paragraphs, basically. That's our first part. Then we have, so this is our main header, and now we have these subheaders. We can all put them in an H2 tag. So we have our H2, and then we have our paragraph. Let's copy and paste these. If I'm going too fast, or if anyone has any questions, always welcome to ask them. Let me know. So we'll now copy and paste these parts. So we added all these things, and you can see structurally they're kind of right, but styling wise they definitely are not right. And you could say that structurally they don't look right either, because all these are under each other, right? They should be next to each other, but they can be fixed with styling. So let's now also add an image. Which, and the tag for that is img. And then you add a source for the image. And we can here put a link for that goes to the image. So I have a link here that is of our WeyDu reunion of 2019, which should work well enough. Yeah. I will put this link also in the chat for anyone that wants to use it too. Okay. So as I said before, we will leave this logo here and the search bar here and these for now to make it to keep it a bit more simple. But as you can see already, we have most of our text here that we needed to complete this. So now that we have our basic structure, we can start to give it a bit of styling. Right? So styling wise, styles can be added in head, and it's also recommended to, actually no, it's recommended to keep your styles and your scripts, if you have any, to keep them in a separate file. So what you will do when you're actually creating a website, you will have your HTML file, which like I showed you before, we created this index.html before, if you do it in Notepad, for example. But then you would also create your own styling file and your own script files to keep them all separate. It's best to keep all your different files separate from each other instead of all cluttering them into one file, because it becomes way too messy and way too big and you won't be able to manage any of it. But for now, just for the ease of explaining and for the ease of just this live stream, we will implement the styles directly in our editor. And there are two ways of doing it directly inside the editor too. So you can apply a style immediately into an element. For example, I will show you just a small example. We have our navigation, for example, right? And this navigation, we can add an attribute to it, which is called style. And then we can say I want the color of the navigator to be red. And if we run this, we will see that everything inside is red. Now, if you want the background color to be red, then you should write background color, then the background becomes red. But we don't want to do this. This is not recommended practice. Oh, scroll down to see the tag used for image. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Sure. So it's just, I will put this on the right a bit. So it's just image and then the source. So src equals, yeah, I'm not sure when you wrote this. I haven't checked the chat the last few minutes, but it's basically image, then source, then the link. So, okay, I will continue with the explanation here. So this is a way of adding styles, and you could add styles basically to every element like this, but like I said, this would be way too much, way too cluttered, and you don't want this. So a method that is a bit better is to add all your styles in a separate tag, which is called style, which you can add in your head. This. And then you can basically write all your styles in here. For example, if we want to change nav here, we would have to write nav here. Okay, I see you got it. Perfect. So we can change the nav styling right here by writing nav, having these curly brackets, opening and closing them. And then we can write the same thing here. For example, background color is red. So we removed it here, added it here, it should stay red. And it definitely is. Great. So, this is of course very ugly. So we will not keep this. I will remove the styling. So if, for example, you used this way of creating separate files like it's recommended, then you would have to link your HTML file and your styling file, which is called a CSS file. You wouldn't have to link them somehow, which would be with a link tag in your head. So, for example, for styles, it would be something like link and then relationship with a short version rel. You say it's a style sheet, and the location of the style sheet is the current directory um, called style, and the file is called styles.css. And the same would be for scripts. If you have a JavaScript file which you need, then you would have a link with your relationship, which is a script, and your file is called scripts. But we don't need that now, so we will just continue with style. And we will start with the navigation bar. We will try to make all these stand next to each other instead of on top of each other, and we will try to center it. So to put them all next to each other, we need to make sure that the styling called display needs to change, because right now the automatic styling that list item gets is called display block, if I'm not wrong. And a display block, if your display is put on block, then it basically takes the whole line for your element instead of just the content of it. So right now, for example, home is actually the whole length here uses the list item is using the whole line here to display its element, and we don't want that. We just want a list item to be as long as the content inside. So what we need to do is to add this item, and then instead of having display block, so right now it's probably display block, it should be display inline. And because it's inline, because it doesn't take the whole line anymore, the whole width of the page, everything comes together nicely. Okay, that's great. Now we want to have some space between those elements because they are way too close to each other. So what we should do is add some margin to it. Margin is basically a bit of space that you add outside of the element. There is also padding, which is almost the same thing, but slightly different because it's about it adds room inside your element. So you have home. We have our home text inside our list item, basically, right? Our home is in our list item, and we can add some space inside our list item, but outside our home content. So it's between those two, which would be padding. If we want some space outside our element, it would be a margin. So right now, it doesn't really matter that much in our situation, I guess. But I think it's best to add a padding then. Or maybe, oh yeah, it should be pixels because we work in pixels. Oh, that's great. There is way more space now between the elements, but we want it to be centered too. So we will add nav. And we will say that everything inside nav needs to be centered, right? So we will say that all the text needs to be aligned. So text align, center. Perfect. Okay. So now we have our navigation basically, which is perfectly centered in the page. Doesn't matter how big we make it, it stays centered. All right. Okay, let's continue. So you see that here everything is stuck to the sides. Like this perfectly takes the whole width. This image takes the whole width of the website. And here you can see that there is a bit of space, which basically means that there is some margin or some padding, probably some padding inside the body element. So all these tags here have some default styles to them already, and we want to reset a few of those styles because we don't need this default padding that it has here. So what we should do about that is our whole body, and to remove the padding, just put the padding on 0. We don't need to add pixels because it knows what 0 is in general. So it doesn't seem to be padding, it seems to be a margin. So this padding 0 doesn't do anything. So we'll do margin 0, and yes, it was the margin, which is basically 0 now. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Now that we are done with that, yes, we should continue on with, let me see. The WeyDu image doesn't scale well the whole website, so we need to do something about that. As you see, if it becomes too wide, it doesn't, the size doesn't increase with the web page, and if we go to the right, the image stays as big as it is. So we need to change the styling enough so that it always becomes 100% of what we currently can see, which is really easy to do. If we just add our image here and we want to add some styling to it, then we can, and we want to make sure that it stays 100% of the width of the screen, then we can just do 100% with 100%. And now it's 100% of the screen. Now it's perfect. So if we increase it, it stays 100% of the screen. If we close it down, it stays 100% of the screen. Exactly as it should be. Now we're getting a bit closer to this result, kind of. But like I said, it will be pretty basic. We won't be able to go as far. So to continue with this, we could add some links to them. So these right now do nothing, right? So if we hover over them, nothing happens. If we click on them, nothing happens. We want to actually make them clickable. And to do that, we need to update our HTML a little bit. Okay, so to make a link, a hyperlink, you have to use the tag A. Then back. And before it becomes a link, you have to add a location to it. So href is basically the location of the link you want to press on. If you don't add anything, it won't become I mean, if you add an empty tag, it will create this link, but the link won't. So if we now add, for example, we can just take the home page of WeyDu. We add it here and run it. Then if we click this, it opens the WeyDu page. As you can see, we actually went to the website. So now let's run it again. Go back. We will leave the others for now as is. I think this is enough of an example of how these links work. Because we probably don't want any decoration on our link here, actually. So we see that there is automatically an underline because it's a hyperlink element, so it will automatically add this underline to it. And we don't want that, so we will style that away. Now, I don't really remember if it was text decoration that worked on this or not. Yes, okay, it does. It does. So by removing text decoration, so setting the text decoration none, you can remove the underline. I think it's also possible to, I think there is an underline and none that you can also do. Okay, no, that doesn't work. Okay, then let's leave it at text decoration on that. Okay, so we have now a working link, a decent structure, WeyDu that grows beautifully, and kind of working navigation bar. Now let's make these a bit more beautiful, let's say, a bit like these here. Which would mean that we would have to change the font style of these elements. And to do that, we would basically have to change the font style. I think it's better than if we let's just add this A element to everything. Why not? Then we will just change the font style in the A element itself. Yeah, that's good enough. Okay, and then here we can choose another font family, right? I'm not sure which font family we use over here, so I will check if it's something we can use. So the font family that this uses, I'm actually not too sure. I can't immediately find it. Unless... Let's maybe try just Arial, or is Arial? Yeah, okay, that's already better. That's already better. That's close enough, I would say. Arial should be good enough. I was hoping I could find the the font family of these here, but I was not able to. But Arial is good enough. Now, as you see, the color of them are not right, so we will also change the color to black. Perfect. Now they're black. And then there is also font weight, which basically is the thickness of the font. If we put it on 900, it should be very thick. Yeah, we don't want that. I'm not sure if that changes anything 300, because you can you have like these different levels of font weight that go up to 900. Some of them, depending on the font family that you're using, won't really change much. Okay, I think 700 for now. It's still a bit thick, but it should be good enough for now. Now, this is a bit more complex, but now that we're working on the navigation bar, why not try something a bit more fun? If you want another effect to happen when you hover over a certain list item, or anything, really, you can add hover in styling. So when you're hovering over an element, you can basically change its styling. Example like this. As you see, if I hover over an A element, then the style changes to red. Now here, the whole background changes to blue, and the text changes to white, but we will keep it simple for now and just make it keep it like this, or maybe in the beautiful WeyDu colors blue. Oh, okay, this is not the beautiful color that I was thinking of. Good enough, I would say. Good enough. Okay, so now the last part of it would be this line over here. Actually, I really don't like this font weight, so I will probably change it back. Yeah, that's good enough. Okay. So now, as you've seen before, we want all these elements to go next to each other. There are multiple ways of doing this. The best way would probably be to use a flexbox, but flexbox is a way of styling that is that I don't want to get into right now. It's a bit more complex. So I will try to find a different method to do this. So we want everything in this first div to be on one line, right? So it's important. So this can be a block, or a inline block. It's also possible. It doesn't really matter. So, but these definitely cannot be block, as they need to be next to each other. So these divs need a different type of styling. So because we want a different type of styling for these different divs, for example. Now, for in this situation, it's not really necessary, I guess. But let's say that you want to give these divs a different styling than this div over here. You want to be more specific, right? One way to do, but which, like I said before, I do not recommend, is adding the style immediately to it. It will be specific for this div element, but like I said, if you're doing this for every element, it will become way too cluttered. But So you can actually give it an ID or a class, which allows you to target more specifically the elements that you want to style. Classes are used for elements or for yeah, for the different types of elements that you want to give the same style to, and IDs are used for very specific kind of stylings, which you will only basically use in one place. So classes you will use in different places. For example, if I want to give this div a specific style, I would add an ID here and call it WeyDu description or something like that. Yeah, so this whole thing is the WeyDu description basically. And then I can add a class to the other parts and call them WeyDu description part, for example. I mean, it doesn't really matter as long as it works for you. It doesn't need to be too complicated. Oh no, this is the closing tag. Mistake. So these classes I can use for all my different, for all the same styles, and ID for a specific one. So now if I want to use these classes and these IDs for my specific styles, I need to call them in a special way. So IDs use a hashtag and then the name. Or you could use for classes dot and then the name of your class. So dot with the description part, for example. And we give them a display in. So display is inline, but because I think because the content is there is so much content in there, they won't go next to each other. I will have to verify though. So if we go, we can see that they're in a div. The elements still take up the whole screen. Need to figure this out. Let's see if our style has so as you can see, if I look at the content, I can see that the style is indeed inline. Now, what we could do, there are multiple ways of doing this. We could give all of these a certain width so that they stay basically 1/4 of what their size is supposed to be. If you had a flex box, you could easily just they would automatically go into their right space with the right styling. But here you have to be more specific. So if we take this first one, for example, with description part, or actually no, if we can give them all a width, or 25%. Maybe they need to be inline block actually. Okay, they needed to be inline block. Okay. So the thing about block is that it takes the whole screen, but you can give it a certain width to it. If you have only inline, then you can't change the width at all. It stays in line. If you have inline block, you have the best of both worlds. You can change the width, and it automatically scales to your content if you want by removing the width. Okay, so now that we have these, 25% maybe a bit too big. 24% is good enough. And right now we have the right styling. All the 4 of those are kind of like here, but not fully. I see we are already at the 1 hour mark, but I will continue for a few more minutes just to at least have the right colors and the right font style. So right now, so for every WeyDu description, actually except this one, all the other ones need to be need to have a background color of blue. And I will just check what color this is. If anyone works in web design, for example, it's really handy to have an extension on your browser called an eyedropper or color picker, or this one is called eyedropper, which basically allows you to select any part of your web page and get the color from it. So here we have a color code. We can copy it, and we can basically add as background color to our styling. This here. This definitely doesn't look that great. I wonder if put 8% and it will take as much height as it can. No, I missed something here. So it basically it does not align at the top, because it needs to align at the top to work. No, for now we will just add some padding to it. 10 pixels, but I figured this out. Oh yeah, because we added padding, the size grew a bit more. So let's change this to 20%, 22%. Yeah, 22% seems to work well. Yeah. Now I added the padding. It seems that there is also some margin here, because it's not immediately next to each other. I'm not sure why it doesn't. Oh, it's because of the width. Okay. I thought it was because of the width. Doesn't seem to be like it. Okay. Seems that this part is not going according to plan. But as you can see, styling is a whole mess. It takes a lot of work, and it's a lot of experimentation just to get your things exactly right. It never goes according to plan. That's what CSS is. It's always the same thing. What we can do to fix this, the color, for example, would be to add a separate element and put it around those 3 over here. And because we have a separate element that is around those 3, we can give that element a background of blue, and then everything inside of here will be blue. So if we have those 3 elements here, we can add a div here, right, around those elements. And we can give it an ID of description parts, for example. And now we can actually use the hashtag, and we can add a background color to it, and then remove the background color. That should give us, yes, okay. But now the oh yeah, okay. The display also needs to change to inline block. That's why it went to something else. Inline block doesn't seem to do it. Am I missing something? Block. 20% maybe? Is it because of that? No, it's not because of that. Huh. Why does this not want to... This div, for example, goes outside of it. As you see, we fix one problem and another problem appears. I would say that if we can get this now next to this, then we basically have our mission accomplished. Just the other text needs to be white and this text needs to be blue and black. So we can do that too. So we have our H1, which we give the color blue. The WeyDu blue, perfect. This one is already black. All the text inside our newly defined WeyDu description part, so in this needs to be white. This is white. All the fonts that we have should be, oh yeah, also add this thing here. And change the font of everything inside to Arial because it looks way better. Font family will be Arial. That's way better in my opinion. Now we need to find a way to put them together. And this will be, for all of us, a challenge to figure out why it won't let me. It's a lot of experimenting, I would say. Okay, no, that's definitely not it. Let's remove the padding for now, see what it does. No. Does it? Definitely not gonna work. It's basically because I put it, oh yeah, because I put it in a separate div. So now we have these two layers that are on two separate lines. Okay, okay. Okay, I understand now. So we basically have our two elements here that are in two separate lines, and we want everything next to each other. So I feel like there is still something that needs to change for this. I'm thinking of the best way to fix this. I guess what we could do, it's a bit cheating of course, or wait, maybe did I add the ID for parts? Yeah, did I add the part? Yes. And did I add? Okay, yeah. I guess what we could do also is take them all out of here. Put them all on the same level. And then make sure that WeyDu description in general, so now they should be all next to each other. So now we add in the whole thing, we will add a background color blue, color, and then the special blue that we have. Okay, and then we can separately, for the first part here, we can add an ID to that too. So you can have a class and an ID, the same object, and we call it part 1. There is also a way to just take the first part of an element, but we will just use an ID for now. I mean the first class. So we have here the same. We have the WeyDu description part class. We've used it 4 times. You can use it. We can basically in styling, there is a way to take the first time it is used and style only the first item that is used with this class. But we will use the ID for them. And then give it a background color of white. I would have expected this to work. Oh yeah, because there is no hashtag. Okay, there we go. This goes a bit out of it, but that's because the screen is not really appropriate. And with some changes, we should be able to fix that too. But right now, I think this has to be white, right? So we haven't fixed that yet. So we will make this white. And I would say this is definitely good enough to what we have. Color white. So we will add the color white to our elements here. And because we added it to every element here, everything became white, but we want to change this back to black. So the ID we had before, we will change the color back to black. Perfect. Okay. So if we now have the full view of the website, we have our navigation bar, we have our description here of our organization, and we have our beautiful picture here. Now, of course, we have here a video playing in the background. We have some text over this. This whole styling is a bit more beautiful, but there is only so much you can do in 1 hour. And especially when you're doing everything from zero, it takes a lot of experimentation, and it's a lot of effort to do this. But in my opinion, it's a lot. That's the fun of it. That's the fun part of making a website. It's trying things out, then trying to figure out what went wrong when something goes wrong, and finding solutions to the problem. And you immediately see a result to what you're doing. So in just 1 hour, we basically created a, well, semi-professional looking page, I would say. Definitely still needs a lot of work, but it's getting there. It's definitely getting there. I would say that I would say that you should definitely try out to make a basic page by yourself, to try out many different elements. I recommend w3schools.com. I will put it in the description, in chat, I mean, and I will put it into the description of this video too. It's not there right now, but I will definitely add it too. So to learn more about HTML, definitely check this website out. There is a lot of info you can get from there. There are so many more elements that we haven't seen. There are tables that you can make special elements for that. it said that we couldn't get to JavaScript, but this was already a lot of work, and HTML and CSS in one video already is a lot of information, so I guess it's better to not have discussed any JavaScript at all this session. I hope you all liked it. This will be it for now. I hope you all have learned something and that you keep experimenting, trying things out. I hope you got a good taste of what web development is. These are the very basics of web development. So I hope you enjoyed it. Everyone, have a nice day. And that's it. Bye.